Now that we have had an introduction in terms of what participles are, remember I said that the first way in which we were going to be looking at participles was with a verb structure that happens to be a two-part or a two-word verb structure called the present perfect. So if you watched the video prior to this, I already kind of gave you an introduction in terms of what is the present perfect, but now we're going to look at it in more detail. So the present perfect is in English stuff like I have gone to the store. She has eaten at that restaurant before. They have seen that movie. You have written your composition. So that is what we're doing in English, and now we're just going to convert it to Spanish. The present perfect also does exist in English, and it is this. Even in English, it is a helping verb. In English, your helping verb happens to be to have. It's not that way in Spanish. And then gone, eaten, seen, and written are even participles in English. So we'll see how we're going to do this in Spanish. So I'm going to introduce it even further, this present perfect thing. Pause the video and then put some example sentences up on the board so we can practice just a little bit. So the present perfect, the first component of it is what we call the helping verb or the auxiliary verb. Remember I said that in English we also have an auxiliary verb or a helping verb with this construction, but it happens to be have. If you notice it's all have and has and whatever. Do not let that confuse you because obviously the verb tener is to have in Spanish, but you will see we do anything with the verb tener over here as our helping verb, aka our auxiliary verb. In Spanish, for the present perfect, our auxiliary verb is something called the verb haber. It's Haber. It's not usually a verb that many students are extremely familiar with, but it's because it's generally used as a helping verb, aka an auxiliary verb. So we're going to have some form, of course, the appropriate form that would match whatever subject we need of our auxiliary verb haber. And this is the conjugation set that you will need. So it's has, ha, hemos, han. Again, it's has, ha, hemos, han. A lot of students make the very logical but very funny mistake of, because it looks so much like in English, of saying like he has ha. Please don't do that. Remember what vowels sound like in English versus in Spanish, and remember that the H's in Spanish are never going to have a sound. So again, it will, if I am the subject, it will be yo, blah blah blah. Tú has, él, ella, usted, Mario, Julia, Roberto, José, a, nosotros or nosotras, we, hemos, and then ellos, ellas, meaning they, ustedes, meaning you, guys, you all, you, plural, or like two subjects. So it could be los profesores, los estudiantes, two or more, or maybe Mario y Julia on. So that is our helping verb. We need to know this portion of it, and then that is going to be added to, well, in front of, what's going to be added to that, it says plus a participle. So if you watch the last video, we already know how to form participles, and the way in which we do that is if we have an AR verb with which we would like to form a participle, we're going to chop off the AR and we're going to add ADO, ado. If we have an ER verb or an IR verb with which we would like to form a participle, we're going to chop off the ER or the IR and add IDO, ido. Remember that there are some kind of things I told you to be careful about in the prior video, and also that there are some irregular participles, but these are the regular ones. So if I want to form the present perfect, if I wanted to say, I have gone to the store, she has eaten at that restaurant before, they have seen that movie, you have written the composition. If I wanted to say anything like that in Spanish, then I would be using the present perfect, where it's called el presente perfecto. And this is how I would do it with this auxiliary verb and then with a participle. So I'm going to pause the video right now and put some examples up on the board for us to practice just a little bit. You'll see some examples behind me, but you will, which we'll do in a second, but you'll also see that I have left this up on the board but made a couple of notes about it. Before we get to examples in Spanish, it occurred to me that a lot of the mistakes that students make with the present perfect, or especially with participles in Spanish, is because we're not really good at our participles in English. We always mess up our participles in English. So I have called a couple of the most common mess ups to your attention. And one of them is the participle for to write. We're talking English, right? This is in English. We're talking English. So what happens is I might say to a student, hey, John, have you written the composition? Have you already written the composition? And that would be a sentence that I would form to John, a question that I would form to John using the present perfect in the English. Have you written, hey, have you written the composition yet? And John, if he's not that great with his English present perfect or not that great with his English participles, John might mistakenly, and it's going to seem probably so common to many of you, instead of saying back to me the appropriate thing, let's say he has written his composition, instead of responding back to me, yeah, I've written my composition, or I have written my composition. Many students, many just people in general, instead say, yeah, I've wrote the composition, or I have wrote the composition. That's wrong in English, because wrote is past. So like, I wrote the composition 3 days ago, but I have written 2 compositions already in this class, or something like that. So we are bad with our participles in English. One of them, most common, being to write. This is the reason why I wrote a couple of these on board. The other participle that we're bad with in English is to see. I would ask that same John dude, hey John, have you seen that movie? And that's a question that I would pose to him in English, utilizing the present perfect. Hey John, have you seen that movie? Is it good? And have you seen that movie is the present perfect. And if John were responding to me appropriately, he would say, yeah, I've seen the movie. But John might, which would be good, that would be correct, but John might also, and or sometimes say, just people in general, but in this case, whoever the heck John is, would say, instead of, yeah, I've seen that movie, or I have seen that movie, correctly utilizing the present perfect, he might say, yeah, I seen it. I seen it. Have you seen her before? Yeah, I seen her yesterday. Or even better yet, people will say like, seen? Yeah, I seen it. I don't know. I think it's like a rural thing, but I could be wrong. I just know that out there in life, there are a lot of people saying like, yeah, I've wrote my composition, instead of appropriately, I have written my composition, or yeah, I seen that movie. It should be technically, if you're gonna say I seen, you need the helping verb and say I have seen that movie, or the contraction I've seen that movie. You can't use the participles all by itself in English and say, yeah, I seen that movie, or I seen that movie, or yeah, I seen her yesterday. That would be incorrect. So people mess up the participle to write and use the preterite instead. Yeah, I've wrote instead of I have written, and people use the participle seen by itself as if it were the past or the preterite. Yeah, I seen that movie, when technically that would be wrong. Another one that people mess up all the time in English is to eat and to go, but to eat as a participle, the way that we often mess it up in English is something like, I don't know, John and I are gonna go get lunch, and I don't even think I know it, John. Anyways, but John and I are gonna go get lunch, and I say to John, "Hey, John, have you eaten here before? Is it good? Do you like it? Have you eaten here before?" Should be a question that I would pose to him in the present perfect in English, and John might respond to me a number of different things. If he's right, if he knows how to use English, he would say to me, "Yeah, I've eaten here before. I have eaten here before, or yeah, I've eaten here before," and both of those would be fine. But John might inappropriately, because he doesn't know how to use participles or maybe even the past in English, John might say to me, "I've ate here before? Yeah, I've ate here before." That's just wrong. And my popular favorite is I've eaten here before. So if I've ate or I've eaten sounds good to you, just know that that's not okay. And then another one that people mess up in English is to go as a participle. I've gone on vacation. It's not true, but I've gone on vacation this year. Have you gone on vacation this year? And people will say, "Yeah, I went on 2 vacations this year." "I went on 2 vacations this year" is wrong. It's something like, "I went to Colorado 2 months ago," or "I went to California a year ago," as a past or preterite, but it can't be "I've went" or "I have went." So, not trying to make fun of anybody at all, ever. If I want to, you'll know about it. But if any of the things that I have just said to you in terms of how we mess up the present perfect or participles, or use participles instead of the preterite or whatever that was over there, those are the most common misuses of the participles or the present perfect, or the participles instead of the preterite, or by the preterite instead of the participle, or whatever in English. So for that reason, I have given you examples that we're going to do over here in Spanish that are going to utilize to write and to see and to go or to eat or to whatever in Spanish. And there have been so many students over all these years that have told me, "Man, I think my present perfect in Spanish is better than it is in English." So just be aware of that, because some of the reasons why present perfect is not difficult at all. It's extremely easy. But some of the reasons people do not, let's say not do that good of a job, but let's say some of the reasons why they find the present perfect to sound unnatural to them is because they don't use the present perfect appropriately in English. So maybe as we learn some Spanish present perfect, you can make your English present perfect or participles or whatever better. So if any of that stuff that I just said to you sounded right, it's not. Be careful with your present perfect and your participles in English. So I'm going to erase this, and then we'll do some examples, and then also look at some acabar plus de plus infinitive, which are, depending on the context, just very common responses, or kind of go along with the present perfect. If you have watched the other video that talks about the intro to participles and stuff like that. So I'm gonna get rid of some of this stuff, and then we'll do the examples. In order to know how to fill in these blanks with the present perfect, you should have your notes next to you from a little bit before. In the other video or the beginning of this one, I don't know, all these videos are running together, where I actually put how to conjugate the, oh, it's this one, yeah, the present perfect. So we have the helping verb haber as our first word, and that was has, hemos, han. And then we have a participle that's going to be formed from the verb that I would have here in parentheses. So remember to make a participle. If it's an AR verb, you chop off the AR and add ado, ADO. If it's an ER or IR verb, you chop off the ER or the IR and add IDO, IDO. But even though I only have one blank here, remember that the present perfect is a two-word verb construction. So there's going to be 2 words shoved in each one of these blanks. So please refer to your notes about how do we form the present perfect. So remember, has, hemos, han, one of those, whichever one is appropriate based off the subject, and then the participle. So we're going to fill in the blanks here, and I'm hoping that you'll kind of do it along with me so that I'm not doing the work for you, that you're actually trying to see if you could do this by yourself if I weren't here doing each one of these with you. So remember that this is always like, I have gone, she has seen, we have eaten, they have studied, y'all have talked a lot, or whatever. So this sentence, when we know we have a blank here and we know that we're using the present perfect, we know that el desayuno means breakfast. We're using the verb comer. The reason why you might see a little happy face, little smiley face next to it, is I'm trying to tell you that the participle is going to be a regular happy participle. So whenever you see a little smiley face right here, etc., that will mean that your participle will be a regular happy participle, not one that you would have had to memorize because it would because it's not an irregular participle. So el desayuno means breakfast, the verb comer means to eat, and the subject in this sentence is yo. So obviously this sentence, if I'm using the present perfect, what I want to try to convey is I have eaten breakfast. Not I've ate breakfast. That's bad in English, but I have eaten breakfast. So my helping verb, has, hemos, han, my helping verb that's appropriate for yo, you should be thinking about this as I'm filling in each of these blanks. My helping verb appropriate for yo, what would it be? It would be a, h, e, and then to make a participle out of the verb comer, I would chop off the ER and add what? IDO. So I'm going to plunk that down. And it will be comido, C-O-M-I-D-O. So the present perfect construction for that sentence is he comido. Yo he comido el desayuno. That whole sentence obviously means I have eaten breakfast. If I were you, I would jot down what these sentences mean in English so that when you go back and look at anything later, maybe if you're jotting down, taking notes or whatever, you'll just remember like, what did that mean? Oh, it means I have eaten breakfast. So again, the whole sentence, yo he comido el desayuno. I have eaten breakfast. Then we're going to use the participle for the verb estudiar. Estudiar meaning to study. A little smiley face next to it because the participle is a regular participle. It's an AR verb, so when we convert it into a participle, we are just going to chop off the AR and then add ado, ADO. The subject of the sentence is ellos, so that is they. So what is the sentence trying to say? If we know that the present perfect is I have blah, 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 you have blah, 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 she has blah, 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 I have eaten, you have eaten, she has eaten, we have eaten, whatever. If we're using the verb estudiar, which means to study, we know that they is the subject. Obviously, our sentence here is trying to say they have studied. I would jot that down if I were you. What does this sentence mean? They have studied. So remember our auxiliary verb, which one is appropriate for ellos? Is it has, hemos, or han? H-A-N. That's the one that's appropriate for a third person plural subject. Han. So I will write down our helping verb. Han. H-A-N. And then the participle of estudiar, we already said since it's an AR verb, we're going to chop off the AR and then add ADO, ado, and that will be our appropriate participle. So my participle is estudiado, E-S-T-U-D-I-A-D-O, and my whole present perfect formation is, for this sentence, han estudiado, and the whole sentence being, ellos han estudiado. Ellos han estudiado. They have studied. Then, in the next sentence, we have the verb hablar, with which we'll be forming a participle. I put a smiley face because it's regular happy, so whenever we need it as a participle form, we're just going to chop off the AR and then add ADO to the end. Sobre is like about, la gramática is grammar, and ella means she. So what is the sentence probably trying to say when we throw in the present perfect? She has talked about the grammar. She has talked about the grammar, or since hablar can mean to speak or to talk, it would either be she has talked about the grammar or she has spoken about the grammar. So we will do the present perfect by helping verb has, hemos, han, that is appropriate for ella, would be a, and then my regular participle for hablar, chop off the AR and add ado, will be hablado. So my present perfect for this sentence is ha hablado. Ha spelled H-A, hablado spelled H-A-B-L-A-D-O. And the whole sentence being, ella ha hablado sobre la gramática. Ella ha hablado sobre la gramática. She has talked about grammar, or she has spoken about the grammar. Then we have the verb cerrar, to close. Cerrar. It is a regular participle. So whenever we need to make it a participle, we're just going to chop off this AR from the verb C-E-R-R-A-R, chop off the AR and add A-D-O, ado, to make it a participle. But let's see what the sentence is trying to say. Well, el restaurante means the restaurant. El restaurante, the restaurant. And this word, this subject right here, el dueño, means the owner. El dueño, the owner. In this case, it happens to be a dude who is an owner. El dueño, something about clothes, I don't know, something about the restaurant. Since the present perfect, we know it, again, like I have eaten, you have eaten, we have eaten at that restaurant before, whatever. What would this sentence try to say, potentially in the present perfect? If we knew that cerrar is to close, what about this sentence meaning the owner has closed the restaurant? The owner has closed the restaurant. Jot that down so that when you look back at stuff later, you remember what your example sentences are saying. The owner has closed the restaurant. What's the appropriate helping verb? Has, hemos, han for the owner. It would be a, because it's like el, ella, usted, conjugation, third person singular. So I'm going to put in a, and then to make my participle, I just have to chop off the AR and add ADO. So I'll do that. And so my present perfect for this sentence is ha cerrado. H-A, and then cerrado is spelled C-E-R-R-A-D-O, and the whole sentence being el dueño, remember that means the owner, el dueño ha cerrado el restaurante. The owner has closed the restaurant. For this next sentence, the subject is tú. So one of the ways to say you, the subject is tú. Then we see something about la composición, the composition. Then we see we're going to be turning this verb into a participle, escribir, to write, but that's not a happy face. That's a little sad face. Why? Because escribir is one of the irregular participles that you just have to have memorized in Spanish. So escribir is one of our irregular participles. So we will not be able to just chop off the IR and add IDO, because if we did that, it wouldn't be a word. We would just have to memorize the irregular participle for the verb escribir. But you can help me to figure out what is the appropriate auxiliary verb or helping verb, has, hemos, han, for this sentence. Tú is the subject, so my appropriate helping verb is going to be has, H-A-S, and then if you have already memorized it, you will know it, and if not, I will fill it in for you. Just make like a note to yourself that escribir is one of the irregular participles, so it's not going to follow the same pattern as the rest of our participles, and after you memorize it, you will remember that it is escrito. And that irregular participle for the verb escribir is spelled E-S-C-R-I-T-O. E-S-C-R-I-T-O, escrito. So our present perfect for this sentence is has escrito. And the whole sentence is tú has escrito la composición. Tú has escrito la composición. What might that mean? You have written, not you wrote, but you have written the composition. You have written or you've written the composition. This next example sentence here, I'm going to want to make ear the participle. I put a question mark by it just so you would question it, and then I put a happy face. So by me putting a happy face, I'm telling you that it is what kind of a participle. If you've been paying attention to the other happy faces, if I put a happy face next to it, then that means that it is a regular happy participle. It is not going to show up on your list of irregulars because it's not irregular. But the reason I wanted to put a question mark by it is because it can cause a lot of students like a what, like a huh kind of moment. Because what do we usually do whenever we form a regular participle? I told you that ear is indeed a regular participle. But what do we usually do? Usually we chop off the ER or the AR or the IR and then add ado or ido. But ear is not irregular. Ear, to go, is not an irregular participle, but it might cause you a moment of pause when you're doing this on your own, because technically you like chop off the IR, but then you're left with nothing, and then you just add ido, I-D-O, and adding it to nothing, but you just add ido, I-D-O, and guess what? You're right. Is weird. You might say that can't be right, but it is. I-D-O, period. Ido is indeed the participle, and it's regular. The regular participle for the verb ear, and we'll throw that in whenever we get to that part. So we can see that the subject of this sentence is ustedes, so it's like you guys or you all. So let's choose our appropriate helping verb, whether it be has, hemos, han. For ustedes, it would be han, H-A-N. Han, H-A-N. And then we already said, even though it's a little bit weird, the regular participle for the verb ir is simply ido, I-D-O. So our present perfect for that sentence is han ido, han ido. And our whole sentence is ustedes han ido de vacaciones. Even though the de most of the time in Spanish means of or from, sometimes there are certain little colloquialisms in which it can take on other meanings. And whenever we say somebody is going or has gone, or it doesn't matter what tense we're talking about, on vacation, not only do we say on vacation in a different way in terms of like we say the word vacation singular in English, but in Spanish we say vacaciones plural as if it were more than one vacation, even though, hey, I'm gonna go on vacation, or y'all have gone on vacation. We're maybe just talking about one vacation, but we generally, when we're talking about going on vacation, we generally use the plural form of the word vacación, so vacaciones, and we generally don't say on like in. When we're talking about going on vacation, we say you're going de vacaciones. So just jot that down, just a little thing to know. De vacaciones, on vacation. And our whole sentence being, ustedes, you all or you guys, ustedes han ido de vacaciones. Y'all have gone on vacation. If you're prone to say, y'all have went on vacation, that would be a misuse of the present perfect in English. And then our last sentence is with the verb ver. Ver means to see. To see is another irregular participle in English. I'm sorry, in Spanish. That's why I have a little not so happy, little frowny face right there. So ver, to see, irregular participle in Spanish. And esa película means that movie. And who? Maria. And so probably this sentence, if ver means to see, probably this sentence is trying to say with the present participle something like, Maria has seen that movie. Maria has seen that movie. So our appropriate auxiliary verb for Maria will be a, and then if you have already memorized your irregular participles, then you know what that is. But if you haven't, then you should learn them soon. And the irregular participle for the verb ver in Spanish is visto, V-I-S-T-O. Again, ver as a participle, V-I-S-T-O. And that whole sentence would be, María ha visto esa película. Ustedes han ido de vacaciones. Tú has escrito la composición. El dueño ha cerrado el restaurante. Ella ha hablado sobre la gramática. Ellos han estudiado, whatever. They have studied. And yo he comido el desayuno. So these are some examples of both regular and irregular participles, and this is the present perfect. And remember that I said there's something that's called acabar plus de plus infinitive that often kind of weaves itself into a natural sounding conversation that involves the present perfect. So I'm going to show you that next. Let's pretend like some of these were questions. I could say, like let's pretend I say to you this first one, I've eaten breakfast. And I ask you, have you eaten breakfast? You could respond back to me, yeah, I've eaten breakfast. But you could also respond back to me, I just ate breakfast. And that just ate breakfast, believe it or not, a lot of people would think that it would be the preterite, but that's why we introduced to you this thing called the acabar plus de plus infinitive, because it's the only way in Spanish today to say that you just did something. So just another couple of examples. Hey, we have I don't know, a test or quiz or something like that today, they've studied, or they have studied is the second sentence. And what if I say, hey, they've studied, have you studied? Because there's a quiz or a test or something important today. Have you studied? It might be natural for you to respond back to me. Yeah, of course. I've studied or I have studied, and that would be the present perfect. But you might respond to me, yeah, I just studied chapter 8, or I just studied chapter 45, or whatever. If you just study, or if you just ate breakfast, then that's where we would involve, instead of maybe the present perfect in your response that would follow this kind of stuff, that's where we would involve acabar plus de plus infinitive. So I'm going to write some acabar plus de plus infinitive up on the board just to practice literally a couple of examples, but kind of as answers to these hypothetical questions if we turn them into questions. As you can see, I left some of the examples that we had done in the present perfect up on the board, and now we're just going to, let's call it, convert those sentences into acabar plus de plus infinitive. So remember that I said in our present perfect example, it was, I have eaten breakfast, and maybe I could say to you, have you eaten breakfast? And you could say to me, respond to me back in the present perfect and say, yes, I have eaten breakfast, or yeah, I've eaten breakfast. And that would be the present perfect, either in English or in Spanish. But you could also say to me, maybe you just got done eating breakfast, instead of, yeah, I've eaten breakfast, or yes, I have eaten breakfast. Maybe you could also, just a natural conversation, you could say to me, yeah, I just ate breakfast. I just ate breakfast has zero to do with the present perfect. It has zero to do with participles. Remember that I've said now a few times that the only reason why we even mention acabar plus de plus infinitive with any of the present perfect is because in just natural everyday life, it seems like acabar plus de plus infinitive is a logical, just real life pairing with the present perfect. If the question is made in the present perfect, then sometimes the answer will be in the present perfect, or sometimes the answer will be with acabar plus de plus infinitive. So let's pretend, if you remember the sentences that I had up on the board, let's pretend that I'm asking you a question, kind of sort of like the sentences that we had up on the board. I've only left 4 of them up there. And you're asking me some similar sentence in the present perfect, and instead of responding to you in the present perfect, I'm responding to you now with this weird thing called acabar plus de plus infinitive. Remember that I had up here on the board earlier. I had what is acabar plus de plus infinitive mean? Is whenever I just ate breakfast, y'all just studied, the owner just closed the restaurant, you just wrote the composition. So nothing to do with present perfect, nothing to do with participles, but often studied in tandem with the present perfect. So it's not difficult. The acabar plus de plus infinitive, what does it mean? Somebody just did something. You are going to conjugate your verb acabar in the present tense, and I have this here for you. If you can't read it if you can't read it perfectly, I will read it to you. So it would be yo acabo. Obviously, you can look in your course materials for the spellings for all of these. So yo acabo, tú acabas, él, ella, usted, whoever acaba, nosotros or nosotras acabamos, and ellos, ellas, ustedes, acaban. So acabo, acabas, acaba, acabamos, acaban. And then you will have they, and then you will have an infinitive. So this is very easy. Let's pretend I actually gave you all the right answers in English already if you were listening about like 1 or 2 minutes ago. But in our original sentence, when we had the present perfect, we had um, yo he comido el desayuno, and that means I have eaten breakfast. And let's say I say to you, I've eaten breakfast. Have you eaten breakfast? Instead of responding to me, yes, I've eaten breakfast. Let's say you want to respond to me, I just ate breakfast. So if I were you, I would write down this sentence right here. Not only write it down, but also write down what it means, because it often doesn't help us if you don't know what it means or semi equates to in English. So this sentence right here, you're responding to me, I just ate breakfast. I just ate breakfast using acabar plus the infinitive. So we have yo and then acabo, this one right here, and then the word they, and then the infinitive to eat. So it can't get easier than that. Yo acabo de comer el desayuno means I just ate breakfast. Of course, it doesn't look like a word for word plunk down. It's not, it can't be, and it's just something that you have to learn as a common structure in Spanish, even though it's not going to translate word for word in English, but definitely idea by idea. So in this sentence, when it was the present perfect in our last set of examples, it was they have studied with the present perfect, and it was ellos han estudiado. Ellos han estudiado. They have studied. So again, if I say, hey, they've studied, have y'all studied? And you want to say, yeah, we just studied. Or if I say to them, hey, John and Jane, John and Jane have studied. But does anybody know, like, have they studied over there? They don't look like they're studying. Have they studied? And then somebody said, they just studied. Literally, they just studied. We have ellos as they. Then we have acaban, this one. They just studied. Ellos acaban. Then we have they. Then we have estudiar. So ellos acaban de estudiar literally just means they just studied. Again, not a word for word plunk down, but remember we try to not do word for word, we try to do idea by idea. Then we have in our sentence that we had up here about the owner and the restaurant and be closed and blah, blah, blah. When it was in the present perfect, our sentence was the owner has closed the restaurant. The present perfect sentence was the owner has closed the restaurant. El dueño ha cerrado el restaurante. But we show up to this restaurant and I don't know if we're hungry, but it's late or something. And I don't know, like somebody on the street says, hey, y'all, the owner has closed the restaurant. And I say something like, really? Like how long ago? Or like, has it been closed for a really long time? Or is it just closed for tonight? And the guy maybe responds to me, no, it's not closed for forever. The owner just closed the restaurant. Like he just closed it for the night. You just got here too late, right? The owner just closed the restaurant. We can use acabar plus de plus infinitive. So el dueño is a third person singular subject. We would need acaba, this one right here, because it matches with the owner. Then we have de, then we have cerrar, and then el restaurante. So the owner just closed the restaurant is el dueño acaba de cerrar el restaurante. The owner just closed the restaurant. And the last example for this will be in our present perfect sentence, we had you have written the composition. You have written the composition was in the present perfect, it was tú has escrito la composición. Tú has escrito la composición. And what if instead of saying you have written the composition, what if we just wanted to say you just wrote the composition? You just got done. You just wrote the composition. You're done. You're going to submit it. So you just wrote the composition. We have tú acabas, this one right here because it matches tú. Tú acabas, then de, then escribir, and then we finish it out with la composición. Tú acabas de escribir la composición. You just wrote the composition. And remember, acabar plus de plus infinitive oftentimes in real life is used with present perfect, and in classes is oftentimes studied with the present perfect. Does it have anything to do with the present perfect? Nothing. But that's the reason why we're looking at it, is because in real life it happens. But from this video, just remember that the present perfect is the helping verb haber, has, hemos, han, and then the participle for AR verbs, it would end in ado. For ER and IR verbs, it will end in ido. And remember that there are some irregulars that are really common verbs that are participles that we need to memorize. In an upcoming video, we're going to see another way in which we use participles. It's no longer going to be the present perfect, but another way in which we use participles that I mentioned in the introductory video, and it will be participles with the verb estar. And so those participles will take on the function of being adjectives. Notice that in this video with the present perfect, just like I said in the introductory video, that the present perfect, we use participles, but it's always going to end in ado or ido. And we didn't have to worry about it whether our participle with the present perfect was feminine or masculine or singular or plural, because it was just a verb construction. But in the next video with participles with estar, participles as adjectives, remember that our participles are going to change gender and number, so masculine and feminine and singular and plural, stuff like that. So this is present perfect and acabar plus de plus infinitive, with participles being used with the present perfect, and in the upcoming video, more participles, but just in a different way.